Festival like this is a beautiful indication of the kind of thing that I truly, truly believe in, and I think makes our society more whole and more pure.
We do not take it for granted that Boulder was chosen as the first North American satellite festival. It's a huge honor we will not forget, and we are enriched because of it. We are indebted to both the local and international people that came together to make that happen, and we hope it's a tradition that continues for decades to come.
Literary festivals like this one build up an environment and an ecosystem to nurture readers and to promote the business of books. They provide an invaluable forum for writers to connect with other creative people.
We sit there peering into those electronic grids in front of our eyes, and it only increases the desire to see the real thing in the flesh. To actually hear an author speak firsthand, to read from their work, to hear the tones of their voice modulate as they read their most treasured passages of prose.
For us, it's special. This was our mothership, and it continues to be. The other editions that we have across the United States are smaller versions, different programming, but smaller versions.
On behalf of JLF Colorado, Festival co-directors Namita Gokhale and William Dalrymple, Teamwork Arts, Boulder Public Library, and the City of Boulder, we welcome you to the first session of the day. Hybrid Form, Revealing the Unseen, Eleni Sikelianos and Diana Khoi Nguyen in conversation. Eleni Sikelianos' poetry is celebrated internationally. Diana Khoi Nguyen's debut poetry collection, Ghost, was a finalist for the National Book Award in 2019. Both poets are known for their hybrid form, and both poets illuminate what is not easily seen. Eleni Sikelianos. Eleni earned her MFA from the Naropa Institute. She is the great-granddaughter of Greek poet Angelos Sikelianos and the niece of Anne Waldman. She is the author of 8 poetry collections, including Make Yourself Happy, The Loving Detail of the Living and the Dead, Body Clock, and the California Poem. She is also author of the hybrid memoir, The Animal Machine, The Golden Greek, and the Book of John. Please welcome Eleni Sikelianos.
Thank you so much. Oh, good. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Suraj. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here tonight. Good evening. I know good morning to some of you. It's quite early in the morning in India. I'm just absolutely delighted to be here with my friend Diana Khoi Nguyen, wonderful poet. And thinking about the title and some of the conversations we've had before the reading, I thought I'd read from You Animal Machine, which is a hybrid, I guess we can say anti-memoir, that in which I kind of trace the history of my grandmother, my mother's mother, who was a burlesque dancer, a single mother of 3 daughters, following the nightclub circuit, mostly in the Midwest of the US, but as far west as Denver, Colorado, as far south as Louisville, Kentucky, and I guess as far east as about Cincinnati. And so I'm just going to start. I'm going to read from 2 or 3 different places in the book. By 1905, every small town in America had a cooch, a shed where young and not so young ladies danced the hoochie coochie, wiggling their bodies like snakes. Muddy Waters, if you the hoochie coochie man, You collect the money. You tend the shed. I got a black cat bone. I got a mojo too. I got the Johnny Conqueroo. I'm gonna mess with you. Who said hoochie coochie means a drunk woman's genitals? It means a single mother's rent. Education required? None. Rules? Never leave money unattended. Never leave the club with a man when the club owner is watching. Pay your house fees on time and in full. You can consider yourself an independent contractor. If you want to get fancy, you can call yourself an ecdesiast. Quote, it might be a good idea to relate strip teasing in some way to the associated zoological phenomenon of molting, unquote, from the Greek ekdesis, Mencken, 1940, OED. In the tradition of fertility goddesses, temple harlots, and sacred dancers, my grandmother began. Exactly which lines of community morality she stepped across is a subject the family does not talk about. My mother feigns ignorance. At the orphanages, she knew not to say what her mother did for a living, but to find equivalents. Yet here is my grandmother before me, in her leopard mask, ears akimbo, whiskers sexily bristling, sly lift in the shoulder, a sliver of breast, revealing half the earth in light, and we guess that the half in shadow. What she was engaged in was the libretto of the leg. As Descartes pointed out, body is divisible into the smallest of units. My grandmother's mind, however, was not. When she danced the ancient dances of Judea and Arabia, you might have seen her inner thigh or her dissectable chest, but she will never be able to divide her thoughts. And I'm going to read then from another section. In this book and the previous book about my father, I have these kind of mock interviews, and I'll just try to turn my head for the interviewee versus the interviewed. I am the informant. I climb into the hole, collect the sample, and get out clean. What kind of sample? Whole sample. Can we establish a domain? Whole domain. What wound are you writing from? I'm not writing from any wound. What wound? Lower left quadrant, her gut. What about your wound? I never write from my wound. I climb in the hole and get out clean. That's the informant's prerogative. Do you have a central picture, a semantic network, a cognitive map? I've already told you hers are leopards, rocks, desert, dancing shoes. Did she wear dancing shoes? Of course she did. Do you think she went barefoot? She said she walked barefoot across the fiery plain. What's inside the hole? Bloody mess, big as a house, ghosts, the famous closet she was locked in, a jug of water, some hardened bread. That's the cognitive structure, basic, dusty. On Easter, though, a whole pastel-colored, brightly lit diorama unfolds. You can peek in at the cellophane window, only relatives allowed inside on that day. The diorama inside the hole? See a baby being built, jelly and soft bone. What else happens on feast days? Tables, chairs, you can sit down a spell in there. What about when it's not a saint's day? Put money in the hole, wind it up, and watch. It's not a wound, it's a birth hole. I climb inside and look around. So, this is my grandmother's womb, kind of cavernous and dark. Walls pulse with darkened color, the carmine glow of a flashlight through flesh from the other side. From the other side, I can hear the murmur of soft voices. Down the corridor, a desert night, empty and cold. In another hall, I find Detroit stoplights, a taverna or two. Sit down for a hot meal, some avgolemino. Someone spits and says the prayer over the soup. Can't see his face. Some real bastards up here. I'll have to wait a long time for my mother to arrive. I give him a kick in the shins, slip out, and stitch up the mess behind me, good as new. And I'll read one short section poem. Oh, time out. Okay, no, I won't. We'll stop there. Okay, looking forward to Diana.
Really, really beautiful, Eleni. That was really mesmerizing. Of course, we could have given you a little bit more time. I mean, we could have heard you forever. We could have listened to you forever, but I think it was just the paucity of time. But thank you very much, Eleni, for that. Our second speaker for today, Diana Khoi Nguyen. Diana is a poet, multimedia artist, and the author of Ghost of, which was the winner of Omni Dawn 2016-17 Open Poetry Book Prize, selected by Terence Hayes. In addition to winning the 92 Wide Discovery Boston Review Poetry Contest in 2009, Kate Tufts Discovery Award and Colorado Book Award. She was also a finalist for the National Book Award and LA Times Book Prize. A Kundiman Fellow, she's the co-faculty in the Randolph College Low Residency MFA and an assistant professor at the University of Pittsburgh. Please welcome Diana Khoi Nguyen.
Thank you, Suraj. Thank you, Eleni, for that reading. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm grateful that the Jaipur Literary Festival invited me, especially to be in conversation with Eleni, who I studied under at the University of Denver. So it's kind of nice to be reunited virtually, but nonetheless, an occasion. So in the spirit of kind of sharing hybrid work, it's a shame you couldn't see some of the images in the book that Eleni read from, but I'm going to share a little bit as I read. And it's less important that folks can follow along, but it's more that you can kind of see what I'm working with. Like Eleni, I'm also working in the archive. So this is a photograph I found last year when my mother's mother, started to move between her various children's homes, as happens in kind of my Vietnamese American family. And this is a photograph of my two eldest uncles and then two of my aunts, or one of my aunts, and this is actually my mother, in Vietnam. And so I've been thinking a lot about what does it mean to listen to the archive, to listen to the image beyond what we can just see. And so that kind of emerged in this piece that I'll read, called Tug. Of a photograph, Barth's studium tells what has happened as it was happening. This one split second back in time, I travel back in time to return to a place. I've never been to a place which had to exist in order to exist on film. In my mind now, do I see the moment, the stadium, a field where grass grows far past my mother's young ankle, the rear of an automobile parked beside the boundary of trees. Upon my own childhood 30 years later, can I map this terrain, the grass, the open field, children's bodies in motion, testing what their bodies are made of, because they can, because it feels good to do so, to strive in this way. 4 bodies, 2 brothers facing off, a sister each at their side. Here are the facts of the photograph, the striped shorts, plaid smock variations on the noses of my grandparents. Knowing what I know today of my uncles, these 2 brothers, I am both surprised them as they are, as they ever were. That is to say, the same bodies, they foreign to them, like a patient who upon waking anesthesia retains no sensation, and so she traces its previously could not have been known. smooth stretches, dead, but these bodies, dead, and people very much them now and yesterday, and evidence of who will die, but now here in the photograph and present moment they exist. But what strikes me is how they hold each other, which is a way in which they hold themselves together securely, so that the grasp does not come loose. 4 hands in contest, held in 2 knots. To embrace is also to secure, which also keeps another's body in place, in time, for the time being, until somebody lets go or breaks free. Is the love of a sibling pure until somebody realizes they hadn't been able to see things all too clearly, and so the fog of the family lifts, but just for a moment, because when your country is at war, you do not have time to consider how to love your brothers cautiously, because it's black and white. Isn't the photograph, the war, the decision to keep on living, even though you couldn't say why or what for? I cannot speak for my mother or her brothers, or that which had happened, that which will have happened by the time they uncover this photograph in the country where I was born, where they are parents of children whom they pitted against each other in proxy competition. Here where I long to hold my hands around my brother's waist, as I did when he was young, presence around an absence. I hold my hands, picture us in her embrace, in this space. The scholar Tina Kampf, who I think teaches at Brown, talks about the vibrational that's present within images. So I kind of manifested where I see the vibrations in the archive here. And that's my mother. And this is her older sister. There's actually ultimately 11 children, but these are just 4 of them. And then I don't have time to read all of this next series, but I just wanted to kind of show it in thinking about bodies, our own bodies from the past. So this is the kind of archive of my own family, so not from my grandparents. And these are pictures this was a picture that was hung in the family's house. And 2 years before my brother committed suicide, he removed himself from the picture. So here he's a baby that's being held by my mother. And I was really struck by what gets left behind. You can kind of see some of or if you can't see it, there's a little bit of the X-Acto knife marks. And so I'm just going to read what remains of the brother and then the mother's body. And this will make sense in just a moment. Shoe. I'm excited to chat with Eleni soon because she talks about like the hole in the birth hole. And I was thinking about this idea of birth, but also like, mothers carrying children. And then so I began to kind of map the word text bodies of her children into her body and to kind of see what happens. There's a kind of ghost, right, child that emerges from the density of that text. And then what happens when I remove it? So I'm just going to read this last part and then we will chat. If we accept the camera's record, let it be known how she staged each of us, every gesture. We couldn't say no. Photographs trigger ones not taken, pictures forgotten in our minds. She cannot remember what she has done. What did she do to deserve such wretched children? She knows now she wasn't meant for this, didn't mean to do any of it. Let her undo it. Let it be undone to her, to all of us. The war, how it foreshadows. Thank you for listening and following along.
Thank you, Diana. That was really, really engaging. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, now presenting Hybrid Form, Revealing the Unseen. Eleni Sikelianos and Diana Khoi Nguyen in conversation. At this time, we'd love to have you engage in conversation with one another about your work. I know you have some wonderful questions and insights to share with each other and with the audience. Over to you both.
Thank you, Suraj.
Thank you so much, Suraj. Are we on screen now? Here we are? Okay. Diana, that was so moving and powerful. And I just love how what you're doing is continuing with the kind of work you were doing in Ghost of, and continuing to explore, trace this family archive. And I guess I wanted to start, can I ask you a question first? And yeah, the question is really, your handling of the material, the work with text and image, and thinking about how, of course, a photograph can erase memory. And then in the case of your brother, he erases himself from that memory. And then also thinking about how in this new work, as well as in Ghost of, not only can that happen, but language itself can cut into image, or can be wiped out. The image can be wiped out by language or vice versa. So just thinking about anything you want to say about how you're handling text and image.
Yeah, thank you for that thoughtful question, Eleni, and your attention to the work. I found myself like having feelings, as we do when we look at photographs, and not really knowing how I really I couldn't articulate those feelings. You have those complicated feelings. I mean, I had a complicated relationship with my brother and also with my mother, and her siblings have complicated relationships with each other, which I witnessed as a child growing up, and the way in which they all talk to each other and talk to us, their nieces and nephews. So I began, I think originally I was just trained just to write words on a page. But what happens when you put the image on the page, when I write, I like to put the image on the page as a kind of marker of like, what am I looking at? Kind of thinking about ekphrastic, but less about describing that, but allowing it to kind of help generate the mood, so to speak. And ultimately that means kind of writing into memory what I know. And then, which also means what I don't know. There's so much about what I don't know. And I'm curious to hear about your process of working with the archive too, with your mother's mother, and working with the photographs and what you know, and how there's the fact merging with like the imagination, right? The imaginative space. So once I began writing, I was like, well, they don't have to be divorced, the image and the text. I can actually literally like create an opacity or transparency so that I can layer text, because people are layered, history is layered, right? Sometimes, what is it, like those old school photo albums, they have that kind of like film where you kind of like put the picture. So there's all these layers that you're peeling back. So I wanted to kind of generate that kind of materiality, but ultimately it was just like, I just wanted to just play by writing in body spaces. And then of course, then that takes up the space of the image. That's a kind of erasure. It's kind of a redaction. And then deciding like, okay, so what if I erase by actually removing something? But what if I also erase by putting too much of something in too, right? So there's all these things that we can do visually. And I feel like in the layering, that kind of captured my complicated feelings, right? Like I can tell you that we have complicated relationships with our mother, but then it's another thing for me to layer her children's bodies, into her, and then to remove them out. So there's something about the act of doing that on the page. I don't know if I'm allowed to turn this question to you, and I'm curious to hear about how you work and maybe how you're attuned to the archive and thinking about memory, and also like stories that firsthand or that were passed down, and what you can know from the archive, and how you write into what you don't know. And there was a moment in your reading where you talked about, I was really drawn to this well, the lines of community morality that the family does not talk about. And I was really struck by like the family does not, there's so many things that families don't talk about. And so I'm curious like how you handle that within your own work, since you work so much with family material as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And of course, in your work, I'm always thinking about presence and absence and how that's marked on the page. And it's certainly something that family stories are constantly, or we're always grappling with presence and absence of the whole truth or the whole story. And I suppose that's why we keep going back there, right? Trying to, I think, as you said, to map a terrain, right? Can I map this terrain? Can I make some sense of this? Can I make a narrative out of it? And yeah, all kinds of ways that I have managed what I don't know versus what I know. And a lot of it is an act of the imagination. I think you've called it a radical act of empathy. In terms of the images, it seems to really depend on which project I'm working with, which family. For my grandmother, because she was a showgirl, a burlesque dancer, one of the things that was sort of central to my experience of her was her showgirl scrapbook. So the center of the book is, and it was on these black pages that were sort of fading. And they actually did have that film over them that you're talking about. So the center of the book is just sort of reenacting a version of these black pages of her showgirl scrapbook. So that is one way. Another way, I mean, what was kind of amazing for me is I had this iconic photograph of her that I grew up with, which is this one of her as a leopard, which led to a lot of thinking about sort of ferality and human and where the line is, because she was a very ferocious person too. So this is her in her leopard suit. But when I could scan that photo, I mean, I was looking at this pre-scanning possibility, and suddenly I could see all these details of her body. For example, she has this beauty mark right here, and I could see her lips. You probably can't see it on this, but just being able to blow up the photo and look very closely was astounding. And that allowed me to start thinking about somebody, she was always on the road, she was in motion, and she did not have a handle on her own narrative, a way to kind of make a net of life for herself, which was part of the trauma. She had inherited trauma and she was passing that down. So one of the things I ended up doing in this book is cutting up pieces of the photograph and using them at various points in the book until the very end. So that's a close-up of her hand, her fingers. So I don't have the whole photograph until the end of the book. So that's one way I was thinking about working with image in the book. But like you, thinking of them not just as sort of they're not illustrative, they're doing some other kind of text, looking for the sort of the resonance.
I love that passage that you read. This is going to sound so weird. I love that passage that you read about your grandmother's breasts. I didn't have thought I would say that.
I like it.
There's the part where you can like see it, and then you talk about the part where it goes into the where you have to imagine it, where it can't be seen. And I was struck too when you mentioned technology, right? That it's enabled us to not only scan the archive, right? You have this physical object, the scrapbook, but also these images, and it allows you to zoom in to see all of the minute particulars, that you can see the mole and the lip and like imagine where the lines of the breasts, right? And that's kind of like the erotic, right, of strip teasing, right? Like the imagination kind of fills in and the anticipation versus like just being straight up nude. So it was also really strong too, like that you were engaging these like acts, right? That you cut up pictures, and that there's, in your reading, you mentioned the word whole, right? Like a hole in the photograph, right? But it's also a whole of the whole, right? And that they're slowly piecing together. And I think for me, in a way, fragmented memory works that way, right? And history is also like that because it's subjective record. And even when we analyze the archive, who's doing the analysis?
And who's collected it too,
Yes. And And that made me think of like the scrapbook that you have of the showgirl scrapbook, but then your own work then, kind of engulfs the scrapbook and provides another kind of context and framework. Oh no, I think we have.
I think, oh my goodness, we have so much to say to each other still. We'll continue off screen. Thank you so much, Diana. I love having this opportunity to talk to you. And thank you, Suraj.
Thank you, Eleni, and thank you, Diana, for that really amazing conversation. Absolutely. We hope that we should continue this conversation next year on ground at JLF Colorado. But thank you very much for being part of this virtual edition of JLF Colorado. Thank you very, very much. Yeah. And thank you all for watching and being a great audience. We encourage you to buy the books of our speakers that are available through Boulder Bookstore within the USA and Full Circle within India. Do follow our handles on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram and be notified of upcoming sessions. Also stay tuned to the jlflitfest.org/Colorado for the full schedule and information about our speakers. In these unusually difficult times, we have struggled to bring you JLF Colorado without charging a registration fee. Please donate generously to ensure a free, seamless, and continuous flow of knowledge. Once again, we'd like to thank all our official partners. And we hope you all enjoyed this conversation and will tune in for our next session, The Color of Words, Shades of Black, Kara Keeling, Nathalie Etoke, and Chika Unigwe in conversation with Sanjoy K. Roy at 7 p.m. MST, 9 p.m. EST, 6 p.m. PST, and 7:30 a.m. IST. Thank you once again. And now we present a reading by Arshia Sharda from the Jaipur Writers Short Series. Enjoy.
I catch a glimpse of my face in the mirror. The light hits it at an angle, each pore highlighted, the scars of acne long gone, a trace to remember. Eyebrows that are overgrown, expanding and claiming the face. The nose that had adorned generations of Punjabi women. The eyes that are too tiny. The high cheekbones, the only outstanding feature in this plain face. The tiny moustache over my lips, the altar at which my femininity is sacrificed. Flaky and blotched skin, the tiny hair, the crooked teeth, the untamed unruliness. Even braces could not salvage this ruin. Some days I like my face. Look into those twinkling eyes, like the way my nose curves, the lips part, the eyebrows arch, like how the sun catches my face. How even if only for a second, I can exult in having achieved glass skin. On other days, the sight of a pimple or an acne scar portends days of agony. And so begins an incessant hunt for miracle cures, praying for the aloe vera and the basin to save me. I like tracing the patterns of my heritage across my face, crisscrossing like stories that go back ages. My grandmother's Punjabi nose, my father's tiny eyes that fold into a straight line when I laugh, my mother's prominent eyebrows, a face that bears the blood that runs through me. Other days, I see a face that is far too much but never enough. Far too masculine, not delicate enough. Far too chubby, not angular enough. Far too rugged, not ethereal enough. The checklist always beckons. The beauty of my face, the desirability of my body slaves to this checklist. I contort and bend to fit into these boxes. Years of effort, one block on another. But I always seem to miss the mark, the goal further away. The anger bubbles over into an agonized scream or a tear, the two often entwine. But I realize that my body, a female body, will forever be a war zone. I catch a glimpse of my face in the mirror. The light hits it at an angle, each pore highlighted, the scars of acne long gone, a trace to remember. Eyebrows that are overgrown, expanding and claiming the face. The nose that had adorned generations of Punjabi women. The eyes that are too tiny. The high cheekbones, the only outstanding feature in this plain face. The tiny moustache over my lips, the altar at which my femininity is sacrificed. Flaky and blotched skin, the tiny hair, the crooked teeth, the untamed unruliness. Even braces could not salvage this ruin. Some days I like my face. Look into those twinkling eyes, like the way my nose curves, the lips part, the eyebrows arch, like how the sun catches my face. How even if only for a second I can exult in having achieved glass skin. On other days, the sight of a pimple or an acne scar portends days of agony. And so begins an incessant hunt for miracle cures, praying for the aloe vera and the basin to save me. I like tracing the patterns of my heritage across my face, crisscrossing like stories that go back ages. My grandmother's Punjabi nose, my father's tiny eyes that fold into a straight line when I laugh, my mother's prominent eyebrows, a face that bears the blood that runs through me. Other days, I see a face that is far too much but never enough. Far too masculine, not delicate enough. Far too chubby, not angular enough. Far too rugged, not ethereal enough. The checklist always beckons. The beauty of my face, the desirability of my body slaves to this checklist. I contort and bend to fit into these boxes. Years of effort, one block on another. But I always seem to miss the mark, the goal further away. The anger bubbles over into an agonized scream or a tear, the two often entwine. But I realize that my body, a female body, will forever be a war zone. I catch a glimpse of my face in the mirror. The light hits it at an angle, each pore highlighted, the scars of acne long gone, a trace to remember. Eyebrows that are overgrown, expanding and claiming the face. The nose that had adorned generations of Punjabi women. The eyes that are too tiny. The high cheekbones, the only outstanding feature in this plain face. The tiny moustache over my lips, the altar at which my femininity is sacrificed. Flaky and blotched skin, the tiny hair, the crooked teeth, the untamed unruliness. Even braces could not salvage this ruin. Some days I like my face. Look into those twinkling eyes, like the way my nose curves, the lips part, the eyebrows arch, like how the sun catches my face. How even if only for a second I can exult in having achieved glass skin. On other days, the sight of a pimple or an acne scar portends days of agony. And so begins an incessant hunt for miracle cures, praying for the aloe vera and the basin to save me. I like tracing the patterns of my heritage across my face, crisscrossing like stories that go back ages. My grandmother's Punjabi nose, my father's tiny eyes that fold into a straight line when I laugh, my mother's prominent eyebrows, a face that bears the blood that runs through me. Other days, I see a face that is far too much but never enough. Far too masculine, not delicate enough. Far too chubby, not angular enough. Far too rugged, not ethereal enough. The checklist always beckons. The beauty of my face, the desirability of my body slaves to this checklist. I contort and bend to fit into these boxes. Years of effort, one block on another. But I always seem to miss the mark, the goal further away. The anger bubbles over into an agonized scream or a tear, the two often entwine. But I realize that my body, a female body, will forever be a war zone.
I would call the Jaipur Literature Festival a living library, or perhaps even a library of life. Do join us as we share the excitement of ideas and of debate and dialogue, of the adventures of science, of the joys of poetry and music, the consolations of philosophy, the sense of literature and of life.
I had heard so much about the festival in India, the scale of it, the energy of it, and I just love the fact that there is this effort to bring it to other cities in the world.
It's a variety of topics. It's meaningful. I'm just excited. I'm feeling like I've learned a lot to think about, and I appreciate JLF coming here.
Going forward, it would be a very good thing to do for the community to have this event on an annual basis.
I think that when you hear so many different voices and perspectives about the South Asian diaspora and many other issues, you learn that there's a lot of history that you're not taught every day, and I think that that's important to bring in today's world.
I was actually really surprised by the camaraderie I experienced here and the way that people at JLF, both attendees and other panelists, seem to really connect profoundly to literature and care about it.
In 2020, our live version of JLF has been laid to waste because of COVID-19. However, nothing's going to stop us from coming in the way of bringing our writers and speakers to you in Boulder, Colorado, Houston, New York, and Toronto, Canada.
Teamwork Arts, bringing India to the world and the world to India through Indian art and culture for over 30 years. One of Teamwork Arts' signature events, the Z Jaipur Literature Festival, is the world's largest free festival of its kind. With daily interactive sessions, lively debate and dialogue, and international music performances every night, it's no wonder the festival attracts over 500,000 visitors a year. The Jaipur Bookmark, an international B2B event for the publishing industry, happens during the Z Jaipur Literature Festival and sees a confluence of publishers, writers, and literary agents. Teamwork Arts, producers of the Z Jaipur Literature Festival, have taken the flavor of the festival to international shores with vibrant events in the UK, Australia, and the US. Teamwork Arts takes India's artistic diversity to the world with almost 12 festivals of India across continents in a stunning array in over 40 cities. A feast for the senses, these are spectacles of dance, music, cinema, theatre, literature, and so much more. In each of these places, Teamwork Arts' colourful festivals of India are the high points of the annual cultural calendars. Be it Confluence in Australia, India by the Bay in Hong Kong, India by the Nile in Egypt, Ion India in Chicago, Shared History in South Africa, India in the Sunshine City in Zimbabwe, Edinburgh Fringe Festival, Kala Utsavam in Singapore, Sarang in South Korea, festivals in Abu Dhabi, Shanghai, Sweden. The list is dizzying. The Jazz India circuit is an endeavor by Teamwork Arts to spread the word and sound of jazz across the country. The 2017-18 season, 4 festivals across 3 cities featuring over 25 stellar artists from India and around the world, including Jojo Mayer and Nerve, drummer-singer Jameson Ross, and Dave Weckel, who collaborated with the talented Mohini Day. The Mahindra Kabira Festival celebrates the spirit, lyric and verse of the 15th century mystic poet Kabir in his birthplace, the historic city of Varanasi. Kabir's poetry is about inclusiveness. Mahindra Kabira brings to music lovers an unforgettable experience of listening to leading exponents of the classical Banaras Gharana and rich folk traditions of music on the legendary banks of the mighty river Ganges, along with sessions on art and literature, specially curated walks with famous local residents and delectable local cuisine. Sacred celebrates the spiritual through music and its ability to heal. International artists collaborate with world music exponents from India amongst the most incredible desert settings on the banks of the Pushkar Lake. Heritage walks, meditation, talks and workshops are part of this weekend experience. Teamwork Arts so promotes and recognizes the best of Indian theatre through the Mahindra Excellence in Theatre Awards. The Meta Week in Delhi is an enthralling showcase of the 10 best nominated plays shortlisted from numerous entries received from across the country and across languages. The Meta Lifetime Achievement Award has been presented to leading lights of India's theatre industry. For the young and the young at heart, the Ishara International Puppet Theatre Festival brings local and international performances to audiences across several Indian cities. While the Multi-City Kahani Festival features